Okay, welcome councillors and staff. It's now 4:35. We had a little technical with our hookup for our Zoom, but we're all good to go now. So just before I open the meeting, I'd just like to mention to all councillors that unless you're actually speaking, could you please have your microphone on mute, so that eliminates all background noise, which makes it a lot easier for everyone to concentrate on what's happening. So if everyone just takes note of that, that should make that a little bit easier for everyone. That's about the bit of housekeeping that I had to do, given we have no visitors in the chambers and staff are all aware of the procedure to leave. So now I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're all meeting on this afternoon in various places, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. The next item is in regard to the live streaming and the Zoom meeting, which is being live streamed, recorded and published in accordance with Council's live streaming policy. To those present in any gallery today or attending by Zoom, you're at a public meeting and consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and or the General Manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and unacceptable behaviour and or comments. The next item on our agenda is public forum, and we have some speakers in public forum today. We have three. The first speaker I will call on to speak is Michael Ward from the Burra Business Chamber in regard to item 2109, Hilltops Council Major Events 2020. So Michael, what happens there is I set a clock. You have 5 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a little heads up, hopefully after 4 minutes, to let you know you're getting close to your time, and I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, Michael.
You need to unmute Mr. Ward.
There we are. You can hear me loud and clear.
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hello to everyone. I'm here in two parts. There is myself as President of the Business Chamber and also our Vice President and Treasurer, Angus Mitchell. For us, we talk about the councillor considering today to close out on all public events for 2020. We note that 6 weeks ago our local Woolfest committee met and have made recommendation to you today to cancel Woolfest. On our part, we were probably not happy that we weren't advised as a business chamber, nor any of the local businesses were advised, nor any sponsors were advised that recommendation was going to be made. We note that most other councils are continuing planning and pursuing to celebration and economic celebration of some of their events. We also note that the Prime Minister, the New South Wales Premier and other ministers are encouraging significantly small business to get the economy cracking. And of course, from our point of view, as businesses, we see that injection into our local economy is what we're chasing, as well as helping the overall economy get rolling again. If I look around our local regions outside of Hilltops, Cowra seem to be ticking over through September. They've got the Dorset Sheep Show. They'll have the Blossom Festival. The Wedden Mountain Musters continuing. The Ardlethan Country Music Festival is continuing. Murrum Bateman have got their moving feast still happening. As we go into October, the Griffith Vintage Festival. We know the Bathurst 1000 is still being planned. Trunky Creek, they've got a Woolen Horse Festival. We've got Orange Wine Festivals and the Cowra Spring Show. Now, they're all surrounding us and they're planning to proceed, but they've made it very clear that later on, if the COVID environment isn't commensurate, and if restrictions haven't been eased as they're all hoping, they have built in the fact that they will cancel. Now, we all know that brings in some obstacles, but what we think is that they're doing the right thing by continuing to plan, looking for that celebration. Now, having said that, I'll pass you over to Angus Mitchell, our Vice President, and he will continue the conversation. Just one moment.
Hello, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Basically, I've got to move my seat now so you can see my ugly face. There you go. How does that look? Just as bad as ever? Good. Basically, when we were unofficially told that the Woolfest was not proceeding this year, it was a bit of a surprise, if not a few people quite stunned, that decision had been proposed to the council to make a final decision on whether it should go ahead or not. Naturally enough, people have been, business owners have been looking to see if this is going to go ahead or not. And my advice to them is that it seems unlikely based on what has been presented to yourselves today or this evening. To say they're unhappy is an understatement. They're already starting to look at suppliers because of the lack of supplies, I suppose, or lack of goods coming into the country. They're looking to try and get those items for sale for Woolfest, and many of them have started talking to the suppliers.
You've got about a minute, Angus.
I've got a minute. Right, okay. So basically what we're saying is we think that the decision to cancel Woolfest, or the proposed decision to cancel Woolfest for 2020 is short-sighted at this current time, especially when it was made 6 weeks ago. Understanding what's happening in Victoria, well and good. If it continues in that way and we do go down to a second wave, understandably it needs to be cancelled. But at the current time, I think it's well short of where we should be pulling the plug. And I would suggest that maybe another couple of months wait, early September. Like Hall Markets in Canberra are going ahead on the 2nd of August, and they get thousands there each weekend or each on that day. So I'm looking for advice from council. I'm asking council to keep Woolfest on the cards until some later stage when we can actually say, yes, this is not going to be a goer, and businesses won't be as inconvenienced as they believe they are now. I'm done.
Thank you very much for that, Angus and Michael. Appreciate your input there. So, councillors, the next speaker we've got is Bronwyn Ryan, who's speaking on item 12.8.2016, the DA for the recreation facility at Sports Ground Harden Country Club. Bronwyn, you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Bronwyn. Thank you, Bronwyn. You've got how we work, 5 minutes, and I'll give you a little tap at the 4-minute mark if needed. So over to you, Bronwyn.
Sorry, my internet must have been playing up then. Was that me good to go?
Yeah, no, you're right to go. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Great, thank you. Good evening, councillors and senior staff. My name is Bronwyn Ryan. I am Treasurer of the Harden Tennis Club Incorporated, and it is in that capacity that I am the applicant for the DA before you. Harden Tennis Club Incorporated has been a tenant of the current Harden Tennis Courts for many years. In consultation with the then Hardenshire Council, Tennis New South Wales, HRDC, the Sporting Hub Committee, and now the Build Committee, we established the core of the proposal before you. The Harden Tennis Club Committee held lengthy negotiations with the Harden Country Club to lease a parcel of land that we as a separate entity could operate our business. The Harden Tennis Club's new complex will encourage healthy activity and recreation in this town by offering tennis, netball, basketball, and potentially futsal. This land that we have secured a 60-year lease on allows us to build 4 courts to maintain the current facilities we have and to expand multi-purpose courts, which fits with the Harden LEP. Many hours have been spent by many people researching this project. We have had open discussions with neighbours. We have encouraged them to make contact with us to discuss any concerns. The current DA has been architect designed and had studies of critically important issues completed and was presented to council. Through the course of the DA, we have held a meeting with neighbours and encouraged all of them to contact us with their concerns. We have had subsequent on-site discussions with those that chose to engage with us and have further reviewed and refined the design. At significant cost, we have changed the design elements at request of council staff and reactionary to neighbours' issues that arose and continue to arise. The design put forward was a best practice, best fit plan around lighting studies, traffic studies, engineer studies, and acoustic studies. The extra mile and dollars spent to achieve the best outcome for neighbours, fellow members, and community include the following critical ameliorations: twice as much acoustic fencing than the acoustic engineer recommended, a reduced relative level of 900 millimetres of the current level in the northwestern corner to lower the development, retaining structures which were not previously planned with extensive landscaping to soften the neighbour visual amenity, maintaining a gracious ability for neighbours to access their backyards via the maintenance alley when no legal right exists for them to have this access, drainage pipes taking away all our stormwater from the courts and the pavilion will be temporarily discharged through a head wall onto the golf course through rock batters and swales. A soaker pit with water piped to the golf course on the drip line of that significant tree to ensure it does not become waterlogged. This venue at the Harden Country Club currently has lighting significantly higher and with greater light spill than we propose. It has in the past had tribes of young and old playing netball and other sports. It has held large marquee club events on the proposed tennis court sites. We are not changing the use of this land. We are using this land to allow us to build a great sporting venue that is accessible to the general public and will benefit our community as a whole. We thank the staff of the Planning Department for their reasonable and pragmatic assessment under the guiding principles of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. It is our strong belief that the facts have been borne through the planning report and the recommendations before you. Our proposal is in the right zone. It has been done in consultation with community and neighbours and with the Harden Country Club. The proposal is being underwritten by Sporting Grant and with the backing of Kruger Trust. With what is before you, the tennis members win, the country club members win, and our community as a whole wins. I am joined today by the GM of the country club and our development consultant, should any questions need to be asked. I strongly urge you to complete the work of the Harden Shire Council and our committee. Please do not delay this decision any further so we can see this project through to its completion. We started this project several years ago. We are backed by financiers and we are shovel ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Bronwyn. Okay, the last speaker today, and I haven't seen yet, Nicole Bolger, to speak on the same item, the recreation facilities at the Harden Country Club. Nicole, are you with us?
I am indeed. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, can't see you, but can hear you.
Yes, sorry, I don't have a camera on my computer.
Okay, that's fine. No, please, you're there. So how it works is you get about 5 minutes to state your statement, and I'll give you a little bell at 4 minutes if we get there if it's needed. So I'll hand over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors and council staff. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak as an objection to the proposed development application of the recreational sports facility at the Harden Country Club, East Street, Harden. I'm a Scott Street resident whose boundary borders the Harden Country Club and speak today for the residents of 20 to 34 Scott Street and 42 Stair Street. We object to the development for the following reasons. its imposing nature and close proximity of the tennis courts and multi-purpose courts, fencing and acoustic wall to our adjoining properties, the imposing nature and proximity of the golf cart sheds and the parking bays to our residential properties. We contend that the proposed landscaping of the courts interface with the Scott Street properties and the inclusion of an acoustic wall with evergreen trees and vegetation will be vulnerable to extreme heat conditions from the potential heat sink effect of the concrete foundations and acoustic wall. The desired screening and visual enhancement effect of the landscape will be impacted and potentially lost. We note from the submitted plans a drainage sump hole to the northwest Scott Street corner of the courts, with 1% fall of the courts towards the northwest corner and Scott Street resident boundaries. Taking into consideration a rain event or severe weather phenomena at or in excess of 25 mils, the estimated runoff from the court surface area would be approximately in excess of 70,000 litres, making our properties very vulnerable to flooding. In addition to this, the runoff associated with the golf cart sheds, gravel walkway, tennis clubhouse, we assert would have a detrimental stormwater impact, potentially not addressed by the imposition of appropriate conditions as stated in page 131 of the ordinary meeting agenda. We would also like to advise that we have not been contacted by the applicant since our first and only contact at a public meeting held at the HARDEN Country Club on Sunday the 9th of February 2020. And we speak today as private landholders who are fully supportive of the facility, which will showcase improvement for the advancement of our town, but not in its proposed location. In conclusion, we would appreciate Council's consideration of the enduring impact of this significant development would have on our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Nicole. That brings to the end our speakers in public forum, councillors. So we will bring them items forward. One is first on the agenda, and then we'll bring the second item forward after we go through the next three stages. So the next item on our agenda is apologies, and I believe we're all present, so there'll be no apologies for the meeting today. I'd ask that we all will stand here and while I do the expressions of sympathy, please. We pause for a moment's silence for the following: Patricia Buden, Lindsay Tyrrell, Gordon Slater, Kerry Payne, Joan Farrell, Leslie Hiskins, Bernard Bales, Robert King, and William Nichols. Thank you, everyone. Item 6 on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes from the Hilltops Council ordinary meeting in 26th of May. So if I have a mover and second for those to be Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Flannery. Councillor Walker, was it?
Yeah, comment if I could. On my motion for recognition, item 2104 on page 10, Council congratulate Jane Caldo and James Wall for the community-driven Anzac. I had the extra words in for coordinating. As it stands at the moment, it seems to be meaningless without those extra impact words of for coordinating, if I may. For coordinating community-driven Anzac Day driveway dawn services throughout Hilltops.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Those words have been noted to be put in there. So with that amendment to those minutes, as the mover and the second, I'm happy for them to go up. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Item 7 is disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest tonight?
You do.
No, I do have a disclosure of interest on item 2116. While I'm not a member of the Harden Tennis Club or the Harden Golf Club or affiliated with the Kruger Trust, I do have a non-significant pecuniary interest in the matter, and I will be abstaining from the chair, and my deputy will take over for that item. Okay, that's the only declaration of interest. Thank you. Item 8, mayoral minute, which is none. Item 9, mayor's report. The mayor's report to council. Receive a note of a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Horton, thank you, and Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. All those in favour? Item 10 is councillors' reports, and we'll go down as we'll go around the camera as I've got them. So, councillor Rolls, I'll start with top left-hand corner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As printed, and I did attend another meeting with some of the constituents in Harden, re the tennis courts.
Thank you. Councillor Tuckerman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On 28th of May, the Financial Assistance and Sponsorship Committee. The 15th of June was the GM Induction Workshop and Performance Management Workshop. 19th of June was the LEP meeting, and the 24th of June was today's meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Manchester.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, switch back on now. Yes, the Finance and Sponsorship Committee meeting on the 28th of May, the Traffic Committee meeting on the 3rd of the 6th, the GM's review on the 15th of the 6th, the LEP committee on the 19th of the 6th, and today's meeting on the 24th of the 6th.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Councillor Armstrong. Oh, who moved the camera? Councillor Armstrong.
Meetings as noted in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The 15th of June, the General Manager's Induction Workshop. 19th of June, the LEP meeting via Zoom. There have been meetings with constituents regarding the tennis courts, both sides, and today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings as minuted, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. It takes me back up to Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only one that I need to add is the 22nd of June, meeting with residents impacted by the tennis court development. Thank you.
Thank you. Takes me to Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The General Manager's Induction Workshop, the Weeds Committee, and this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And back across to Councillor Horton, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My actual report is contained in the business paper for all to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I got everyone?
No.
Oh, Councillor Armstrong.
Somewhere, Elaine.
Councillor Walker.
Councillor Walker, thank you.
Yep. Meetings as minuted, except one more. I attended the Youngtown Band Committee meeting by Zoom, and they don't seem to be coming to council. So I've got a question about that within council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walker, for that. So the recommendation is that the report be read and noted. So someone happy to move that way? Move, Councillor Manchester. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rolls. All those in favour? Thank you. We come to item 11, Community Recognition Scheme. Councillors, I have a couple I'd like to mention for the recognition, and they are Mrs. Nancy McGregor and from Young and Mrs. Rose Elder from the Harden community, who are both recipients of awards in the Queen's Birthday list, Medal of Order of Australia to both those ladies who are I could go through the list, but we'd be here for a while of the amount of volunteer work they've done for their relative communities over the years and years. And I sent a personal thank you out in my weekly correspondence that these are two very special people, and I just wanted to make sure that from Hilltops Council we acknowledge the importance of all volunteers, but especially people who've been dedicated, such as these two people. So they'll be nominated by me. Do we have any others for the scheme? Take that as a no. Okay, would have someone happy enough to move and second? We acknowledge. Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. And thank you. So that's done. Thank you. So we come to the item that was spoken public forum. The first one is 2109, is the Hilltops Council Major Events 2020 item. Councillors, there's a report there and the documents go with it. There's a recommendation there. I'm in your hands.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the report. Actually, look, I have to change that because it's in opposition. I'd like to move that we reject the recommendation and instead we receive and note the report with a recommendation or an update to come back to the July council meeting in August if necessary.
So you wish to move an amendment to the recommendation, that is completely against it. So like you said, it's not really an amendment.
No, it's
you're foreshadowing a motion, are you?
Yeah.
Is that what's...
Yes, correct.
Foreshadowing a motion.
I think that's the way it'd have to be worded.
It's foreshadowing a motion.
Yeah. So do you get the wording of that, Idri? Would you like?
Reject the recommendation from July
July and then August if necessary.
So we're going to deal with one on the table first.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. Okay, so I've had a foreshadowed motion there by Councillor Flannery. So we'll stack that there on the corner. That takes us back to the recommendation that's there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Armstrong.
if I may, I believe that Councillor Flannery has moved a motion. That being the case, the recommendation is now redundant until that motion is seconded and put. I'm prepared to second the motion for discussion purposes.
The foreshadowed motion you're talking about, Councillor?
Well, it's not foreshadowed, Mr. Mayor, because no one's moved the recommendation.
No, it's true.
So I would suggest that at this particular stage, the only motion that Council has before it is that motion put by Councillor Flannery and seconded by myself.
I agree.
And seconded by Councillor Armstrong. That being the case, that's the motion that we will deal with.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, would you mind repeating the motion, please?
Yes, I'll get back to you, Councillor. We're just taking some advice here for a moment.
Sure.
Just want to make clear that we look for a mover and seconder on the motion as it stood. Then Councillor Flannery considered foreshadowing a motion, and that's not a point of order, but the clarification was. So, and I understand, Councillor Flannery, you have put that motion as not just overshadowing the report. You said, I'm putting the motion to this report to say that exactly what you've done. You've put the motion, you haven't foreshadowed a motion. Is that correct?
I'd like to put the motion, please.
Yeah. So he's put the motion, was there, and Councillor Armstrong, am I to understand that you have seconded the motion as put by Councillor Flannery?
Yes.
Right, well, that's the motion now before us.
Okay, so what we need to do now is have that motion ready out so all councillors are aware of what that motion is, please.
Deirdre?
Do we like to share the screen?
We will like to share the screen, so you'll lose your screen for the moment, and what you'll see on your screen is the motion as put, and then I can read it. So it's not a foreshadowed motion, it is the motion as put. That council reject the recommendation with an update to July, to the July ordinary council meeting and August if required. Councillor Flannery, is that a correct
Yes, thank you, through the Mayor. Thank you. I'm happy with that.
Can I make a comment?
We'll just get organised first, Councillor Walker, then we'll go back to all councillors. Yep, just give us 1 second. So everyone's aware of what that is. So Councillor Flannery, would you like to speak? You can take it down, or not? Or can you leave it up?
No. Yeah, look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I note the committees that the Woolfest Cherry Capital, the Cherry National Cherry Festival minutes, and that of the Kite Festival. But when I look at how many people were there and what appears to me to be a lack of consultation of those committees, albeit that is their role, I do think that we need further consultation with those communities. It would seem that these recommendations have come to council without consultation. I acknowledge that committees have a lot to deal with, but I think it will give those committees time to go back to their communities, and it will give us more time to examine and consider the COVID situation, including recommendations from state and federal authorities.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Would anyone like to speak against that? Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry, I don't want to speak against it. I would like to see if Councillor Flannery would add to his, and that is that when the consultation happens with the communities, that there is council staff at each of those. Because I noted that with the Kite Festival, there were no council staff even present at the meeting. So it's just 4 people making a decision. I'd really like to see, you know, the appropriate staff go to those consultations with the communities.
Oh, you want to do that? We've got it. If you want that as to be worded into that motion, we'd have to seek the grace of the mover and the seconder for a start to see if they want that added in there. Councillor Tuckman's got a hand up. I'm just trying to see if the mover and the seconder are happy to have that included.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know that it needs to actually be included with respect to Councillor O'Connor. These committees are Section 355 committees of council, and council staff would, in the ordinary course of business, attend 355 committee meetings. So I'm a bit at a loss as to why we need to confirm what should be happening now. Can I get some rationale from Councillor O'Connor in that regard?
When I read the minutes, I noticed that there was no staff present at the Kite Festival meeting, and so those 4 people made that decision on their own without staff being there.
Councillor Tuckman, Councillor Tuckman, would like some input there?
Mr. Mayor, can I please move that we go into the committee of the whole, because I believe that there's probably a number of people that want to speak to this motion, and under the current rules, I don't think that would be sufficient to actually give it a good crack.
Okay, Councillor Tuckman's moved that we go into committee of the whole. Do we have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour of going to committee of the whole, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's passed. Okay, councillors, we're in the committee of the whole. We've had a motion put and seconded by Councillor Flannery and Armstrong. The first question was Councillor O'Connor about having staff members present. Councillor Armstrong has addressed that, saying normal run, of course, there would be a staff member there because 355. I'll pass to the General Manager just on that.
Look, my understanding is Section 355, the Mayor and or the General Manager per se, again, it may be particular to the Section 355 committee rules or terms of reference. However, generally, the Mayor and General Manager can attend. Staff usually are invited to attend. It's rare that they're sanctioned as a member of the Section 355 committee, but their attendance in the main is usually welcomed by those committees. it's only when they're held, etc., and availability of staff in some circumstances that may be of issue. But certainly I can make myself available to the utmost that I could to attend these if it's of benefit to those committees.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of observations I had. Two of them, well, it's not clear from the Kite Festival that there's a quorum. It says for the Cherry Festival there's no quorum, so I probably question why that report can even come to council. It's not. It wasn't a meeting, if I can say that. It wasn't a valid meeting, and I understand Councillor Connor's point, but I think now that we're in this position, I think staff will be liaising with those committees, and it will almost become part of the practice now, because I would hope, certainly anyway, before the July meeting, and if it proceeds past that, the August meeting, there'll be consultation between the various committees and their constituents and staff and the committees.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. It's a very relevant point. Councillor Walker, comment.
Yes, if I may, I'm actually, and a few of us would be on delegates to several committees, and I'm the council delegate on the Cherry Festival 355 committee. Now, Councillor Flannery was correct in that there was not a quorum, and that was mainly not a quorum for technical reasons. I spoke to the staff before and after the meeting, and for some reason we couldn't get connected, and I was down as an apology, but that's not recorded also. But I will make the following observations: is that what Mr. Ward and Mr. Mitchell from Burrawa has already pointed out, that they're very, very relevant to communities, and there's a lot that need to be considered straight away. And I don't like the phrase in Councillor Flannery's motion that we put things off the next month to July or August, because a lot of planning processes need to start now. And I think the thrust of the talk by Mr. Ward and Mr. Mitchell was excellent. Is that a lot of planning and sponsoring and these sort of processes need to begin now, and it's easier to cancel at a later date. It's easier, I should say, to cancel at a later date than to try and catch up and run an event that the community is really behind and wants to run.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tuckerman.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate everyone's comments in regards to in regards to cancelling the events. But I think people have to realise the amount of work that goes into holding these events. And let's be very clear that events like we have, and that's the whole gamut of them, are not going to be possible run as they have previously been run under the current health orders. So we as a council need to make a decision about where we're going to head. Now, if we are innovative, we could be starting to think about, well, how else are we going to get people to visit our communities and support our small business fraternity. So I think we have to be realistic, and I want to thank the staff that have been working very hard. I know the Woolfest have been discussing this for a number of months, and there are business people on that committee. And I know that it's out in the community, because my husband come home and told me that it's been cancelled, and I said, well, that's impossible because it hasn't been to council at this stage. But I do understand the lack of consultation, and perhaps we could be considering maybe going out to the community by saying that we're thinking about cancelling these events, and we invite submissions in regard to that. But I think we have to be realistic, everyone. We cannot run them as we have been doing in the past. When you talk about the Burrawa Woolfest, you're talking 10,000, 15,000 people. It does not, and there's no actual gate takings. There's no ability to take people's names in regards to tracing if something should occur. I think we just have to be really realistic about what we're doing and start thinking about, well, how else can we get visitors to our community? And I think There is a budget there. It's been proposed in that previous recommendation by staff about getting out and selling our region. So that's my 2 cents worth, and I think we really have to consider what it looks like, what we're actually stopping, but maybe there's an opportunity to hold something that will fit the health orders at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckerman, for that. Councillor Manchester, I think we go first next. Yep, Councillor.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I tend to agree with a lot of the comments that Councillor Tuckerman just made. We need to be very careful of these committees. They work very hard for the community. In most cases, it's usually only 2 or 3 people who do all the work on them until coming near to the event, and I think we've got to respect that. I tend to think that they have made the call a little bit early, and I don't. I think I tend to agree with Councillor Flannery that we might leave it a month and let's communicate with the communities and these committees to see whether they still want to go down that line, and then reassess it after that, because it will be a big boost to the three townships and the Hilltops region as a whole if one or all of these events get up and do happen. But it won't be like it was previous years, and that's what Councillor Tuckman stated. There will be different criteria, but with the Cherry Festival, that's not until December. The Kite Festival is towards the end of or middle of October to the end of October. The Wool Fest is the beginning of October, which is probably the urgent one to make a call on. But I would tend to think that we need to find out whether the committees still feel that way. I can't remember the dates of some of these when they had these meetings, but I think it was probably right in the centre of some of the COVID-19 issues, and to see where they sit under the current situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor's next on the.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to. I agree with what actually everyone has said. I do think the call was made too early. However, it probably is a call that they made based on what they were able to do at the time, because they're all volunteers. But I think that we could do something with, COVID-safe things like the suggestion with the art show, photographic competition, farmers market and big breakfast in each of the towns. And that would actually give us the opportunity to have some event that would be COVID-safe without cancelling everything. And it would just, be able to do something for it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Walker was next on line. I think then I'll go to Councillor Rolls.
I'll just make 2 comments. On a statewide scene, we seem to be getting very mixed messages, which I've already made a point about in my column, is that they can bring allowed football crowds in of 20,000, and we're talking about a crowd of 10,000 here is one thing in December, and I'm talking about the Cherry Festival, of course, at this point. And the other one the planning, whatever festival it is, the planning needs to start now, no matter what it is. We can't say we'll put it off a month and start planning then. It's like our good speakers have already said, we need to start the planning now. There's a lot of work behind all these festivals.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personally, I'm not sure I'm prepared to take the responsibility of saying to go ahead with the festivals as they are planned, just because of the results. What if somebody comes down with COVID-19? What if it is spread? I'm not prepared to take that responsibility. I'm also supporting what Councillor Tuckerman said, that we can't go ahead with these festivals as they are, because there's no way that social distancing can become a part of it. In the football stadiums, yes, you can social distance, but there's no way it's something like the Wool Fest that can go ahead. I much prefer the idea that some of the monies are put towards supporting and advancing people coming to the different areas. But But I think we also have to take into account, as was put before, these committees, lots of them are older people, like myself, who are in the vulnerable cohort. And there's a lot of planning that goes ahead if we're going to make changes to the structure of the festivals as they are. I much prefer the idea of, why don't we just let it lie for this year, cancel for this year, and then go ahead, reinvigorated for next year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rolls. Councillor Horton, I'm back around come to Luke. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I concur with Councillor Rolls. We have to realise the world is in the middle of a deadly plague. I call it a virus, it sounds nicer. It's a plague. Nearly 500,000 people have been killed from it. And it was at its worst in China and in Italy in the winter. We're only 3 weeks into winter. July is going to be horrific in my book from the flu point of view, but also from Corona-19. And I think it's the original recommendation was spot on in my book. It's just irresponsible to even consider putting 5, 10, 15,000 people together for anything. And from the point of view of the Kite Festival, it takes us about 6 months to get our sponsors in place, the musicians, the stalls, all the organisation. I was an observer at a traffic meeting a few weeks ago with Councillor Manchester and Councillor Walker. And as I recall, the police and the traffic people there shook their heads, and it was decided that they would not have those functions for the reason of the virus. It's too dangerous. So I agree with Councillor Rolls, not in favour of it at all. And because of the lead-up time required, put it off till next year. Thank you.
Councillor Horton. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think a couple of the people are getting carried away. The intention of this motion is to not put a full stop on it, to say, let's come back and review it in July. I understand what Councillor Tuckerman's saying and agree wholeheartedly with that. I agree with the work that goes into these things. But as Councillor Tuckerman has pointed out, there may be other ways, and it's also alluded to in the report, there may be other ways that these various committees can either hold their events either partially online or through council-supported advertising that supports the businesses who rely on these festivals each year to bring these reports to council and say, okay, it's all off, without giving the various communities the opportunity to come up with some other alternatives and workshop that and consider that, I think is just short-sighted. We are a long way from saying we are condoning and supporting them going ahead. And that's just running away with the argument. We are saying that we are just not postponing them here and now. We'll go back, consult with these committees, let the committees consult with their communities, and if there are no other alternatives and come off, then we can make an informed decision. Let's not get carried away.
Councillor Armstrong, sorry, before going, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like most councillors, I acknowledge the fantastic value of the work of volunteers and the incredibly difficult process of organising these community-based events. Of particular concern to me is the statement in the report that event sponsorship has not been sought. That effectively means that council would be responsible for funding 100% of these events, whether they were on or not. If they were to be cancelled at the last moment, then certainly that's throwing money away. I tend to agree with Councillor Tuckerman in that we need to be more innovative. I'm not entirely supportive of just canning the lot, because I think that if we can the lot, then we can't be innovative. And I think that by at least committing to keep our options open until next month, it provides an opportunity for staff to be innovative. It provides an opportunity for the communities and the committees to be innovative as well. And if at the end of 4 weeks we come to the same, or they come to the same conclusion, then I guess, if nothing else, we've at least looked at the opportunities that exist, or reviewed the situations in terms of those any opportunities, and where we haven't thrown that money effectively down the toilet. I'm greatly concerned about the issue of public health, and in that regard, I'd like to ask the General Manager a question that goes to the duty of care that would exist to the invitees and those participants that were visitors that were visiting the area whilst a road was closed. Can you just explain whether there would be a duty of care, what sort of duty of care, and to what extent that duty of care would exist in terms of those persons and the potential that exists for them to effectively contract something terrible such as COVID-19 whilst at the festivals?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Through you, Mr Mayor, Director Hughes has looked at that matter extensively, so I'll pass to him for the breadth answer.
That's a very complex legal question, Councillor Armstrong, and on the public record, I won't enter into that in full detail. Our duties of care over our road reserves would depend to the extent which we were on notice, which is a matter of legal precedent that you've been aware, and also the extent to which we have capacity to control, and also concerns the New South Wales health orders. There's no body of case law that's been determined yet on public liability in relation to COVID-19 in Australia yet, so it's inconclusive the strict liability tests that would be followed. But generally speaking, Council has a broad and general duty of care to the public in managing these events, which we need to take very seriously. And in doing so, we also monitor the capacity of the community when we're considering the whether to go ahead with the events. The capacity, one of the tests that we apply in considering the duty of care is the event organisers and the committees to be able to manage within the framework of their capacity and Council's capacity to extend that duty of care to the event. Now, if we were looking at running these events, we're talking about a considerable ramping up of safeguards, safety management plans, COVID safety plans. There's a considerable ramping up of that duty of care in the circumstances of COVID-19 to the normal public liability considerations that occur during an event. So the capacity of the event organisers and of Council to rise to the occasion to meet the duty of care requirements during the holding of one of these events is a significant hurdle in terms of both the requirements that the state government and the Commonwealth government have set that need to be met, but also in terms of Council's capacity and the organisers' capacity to meet those requirements. And it's that later part, Council's capacity and the organisers' capacity to meet those requirements, that really is the acid test in this. And these are where we need to be quite cautious in not overestimating our capacity, because it's between our desire to serve the public and our capacity to meet those very strident requirements that the shadow falls.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we've been reading my comments in regard to it. I share a lot of the same thoughts that everyone else expressed, and Councillor Tuckman's points about options as opposed to what's been traditional. And that's why when I read the recommendation, I thought it covered it off initially pretty well, because dot point B that's been mentioned alludes to that some budget can be used to attracting visitors to those communities just in other ways and having other functions on, as opposed to we're talking about liability and closing roads and having social distancing. I realise things with COVID-19 aren't as serious at the moment as they are, but every day I turn up now and turn on and we see what's happening in Victoria, and that's quite concerning to me. It is really disturbing at the moment, and I have concerns that may grow, which is a worry for all of us. If we miss these functions, it hurts, but there's been much bigger events called off. And I go back to Councillor Flannery's point, and it was more serious then than what it seems now. But I'd hate to take it too lightly and leave ourselves open and endanger anyone's health and safety in our community. So that's a concern for me. The points have all been made about the committees. They work very hard. They're underhandled. They're undermanned most of the time. They bring reports to us back, which I thought represented their community. The Rural Business Chamber obviously doesn't agree with their Woolfest committee, so that's probably something they need to address next time they have an annual general meeting and sort that out. But I'm withdrawn. I'm worried about putting it off for another month. I quite like that the recommendation was there, but we've all had a bit of a say about it now and enough, hopefully informed to make a decision on the motion that was put by Councillor Flannery and Councillor Armstrong.
Come out of the committee.
So if everyone's happy enough for me, will we move to come out of committee and deal with the matter? Moved Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? In favour of coming out of the committee, please? Yep, all unanimous. Thank you. Okay, councillors, we're back now out of committee of a whole, and the motion that was put by Councillor Flannery was to
receive and note the report and then but defer any decision to July, isn't it? Can you please put up again? Just for a moment, just so they can read it again. Councillors, we're just putting up the motion again so you can see the motion as put by Councillor Flannery and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Can you close the navigation pane, please? Yeah, you just close that one down. Yep, that's it. Thank you. Now, just to check with Councillor Flannery and Councillor Armstrong, were you happy for that addendum to the motion as put by Councillor O'Connor? If Councillor Flannery, you could say whether you are happy, and Councillor Armstrong, whether you are happy with that second.
Look, I'm happy for that to be included.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion as put is as before you, councillors.
Okay, we go back to the screen, please. Yep. So we talked. Councillor Flannery spoke to it. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Flannery, when we go through the process now? No, it's fine. Councillor Tuckerman.
I'd like to foreshadow a motion, Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you.
That it's similar to the recommendation put forward to the council with a couple of inclusions. In A, council cancel the following major Hilltops Council events as we know them for 2020, including those listed.
As we know them.
Yeah, as we know them.
Yep. With the addition of as we know them. Yep, and D, an additional point, so B, C and D, receive a report on an alternative program after engaging with the community.
I'll second that.
Or you second the foreshadowing of the motion. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's the foreshadowed motion.
Okay, councillor. So that's the foreshadowed motion. So we deal with the motion on the table at the moment that we just put up by Councillor Flannery and Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour of that motion?
Flannery, Stadmiller, Walker, Armstrong, Manchester.
How many you got? I've lost. Could you please hold your hands up, please? Those for that. How many you got there?
We've got 5. We've got Armstrong, Manchester, Walker, Flannery, Stadmiller.
Okay. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That motion is lost. So now we come into play with the foreshadowed motion, moved by Councillor Tuckman and seconded by myself.
It now becomes the motion. Can you please?
It becomes the motion.
Councillors, the Minute Secretary is about to put up the motion, the foreshadowed motion by Councillor Tuckerman and seconded by Councillor Ingram.
Nearly forgot.
The pronunciation is everything.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for a clarification on this one?
You can, Councillor Armstrong.
The inclusion of the words "as we know them." Can I please ask what that means? What is the effect of that? Is it the timing of the events? Is it the format of the events? Is it the names of the events?
Usual form.
It doesn't mean much to me. That's all.
You could replace it with the usual form if that's more satisfactory. Councillor Armstrong, with the indulgence of the Mayor, and put this then to Councillor Tuckerman and Councillor Ingram, are you more satisfied with the words used in relation to the Young Cherry Festival in their usual form? Are you more satisfied with them, or is that doesn't clarify it either?
In their usual form?
Yeah.
In their usual format, I'm happy to accept that.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I was just looking for words to explain that, quite clearly we can't have them as we normally do. So we need to either look at a different format or look at something totally different.
Yep. So,
Mr. Mayor, could I suggest that words to the effect of as major public gatherings or as gatherings of major crowds might clarify?
Yeah, look, I haven't got a problem with any words. I just don't know if we need to add too much to it. In their usual format, sort of covers off a fair bit of it, I would think. The public may have some questions. I understand your point about trying to emphasise we're trying to stay away from crowds. I think that's what you're trying to say.
We're not changing time.
But we're not changing locations or time of it. It's just the format of how they're held.
Can I suggest?
Can I make it
traditional? The use of the word traditional?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I think what Councillor Tuckerman's getting at there is that we've been to be a little bit more innovative and perhaps be a little bit non-traditional in terms of how we progress those events.
Yep. I'm happy with that, Councillor Tuckerman.
So yes. Just to clarify for the purpose, is that word to be changed also for C in its traditional format?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, could I ask a question of Councillor Tuckerman before that's put? Is it necessary to have B and C in there? Perhaps when a report comes back to council, we need to then determine the budget. It would seem that we're limiting the marketing budget when we don't even really know what we're actually proposing.
Yeah, okay, well, we could actually ask for a budget as a part of the report. Would that make more sense?
Yes, look, I just think,
so let's take the budget out. Our budget be presented to council in regards to the alternative program, if we can fit some words in there.
That would in Vivi's, that would mean that the staff would have to have an idea of what the alternate functions were going to be, so to arrange a budget around it, whereas as it stood there, we had a budget, previous budget, we had something to work off. But happy?
Look, I was comfortable with and again through you, Mr. Mayor, what this allows us to do, certainly not within the next month, we would have spent 50% of either of those budgets as allocated, and part of that report being brought back to council with the alternate program, that can then be varied by councillors and extended. But this gives the surety for staff that they have a budget that's already been pre-approved, modified to allow them to work on it, and it can be further expanded at the next meeting if it's the direction of council. Councillor Harding. So just for the purposes so that the Mayor can see the screen, are councillors, Councillor Tuckerman, are you satisfied with the motion as put by you on the screen? Councillor Ingram?
I am too, yep.
Okay, at that point, Minute Secretary, can you now take it down? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we've got the foreshadowed motion on the board. Councillor Walker, speaking for or against?
No, what I'm just change the word review. The word cancel at the start of it sounds a fairly strong message out. What we're doing is reviewing the whether in what form these festivals are being held. We're not cancelling, even though we're saying we're cancelling it in its present format. It's sending a mixed message out to the communities. In my mind, we're not cancelling; we're reviewing them with the thought of cancelling.
We're talking about, my understanding, is cancelling in their traditional format. So I'm quite happy with the wording as it is as the seconder.
We've been caught up in words, and we've lost the thrust of what this is all about.
Councillor Tuckerman?
I'm satisfied with the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The mover and seconder is satisfied with the motion. So without any further ado, I'll put the motion as it stands. All those in favour? Put them all.
Yeah,
could you please hold them up again, please? So I'll make sure it's a bit hard to screen. All bar Councillor Rolls, is that right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you. So
Councillor Rolls against.
Against? Councillor Rolls. Councillor Armstrong, what were you doing? Sorry,
I was for the motion, Mr Mayor. I held my hand in the air.
Thank you. Councillor Rolls was the one against. Thank you. That's carried. So I said then we'd bring item 2116 to the table, being that was the next item spoke about in public forum. So we go to 2116 on page 117 of the hard copy. Councillors, that is everyone right? The DA on the recreational facility at Courts at HARDEN, Country Club East. So everyone knows which item we're dealing with now. The report's there. There's a recommendation there. You've had speakers in public forum. I'm in your hands, councillors.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that we defer the recommendation.
Councillor Manchester's moved to defer the recommendation. Councillor Horton.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I didn't move. I moved the recommendation, not to defer it. I moved the recommendation as it stands.
Well, let's hold on. I didn't take... everyone, please. I didn't take Councillor Manchester. Councillor Flannery spoke. I didn't hear Councillor Manchester speak. So
no, I moved the motion as it stood, Mr Chairman.
I wish we had a replay button. Okay, we'll do this. I've got Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Manchester has moved the recommendation as it is. Does he have a seconder? Is a seconder there, Councillor Walker?
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Are you happy to continue in the chair?
We better go back. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and start the whole process again. That's right. I declared an interest in this, so and I missed the first call on the motion, so I will be relieving myself of the chair and stepping out, and we'll be handing over to my deputy. And thank you very much, Councillor Wallace.
Pleasure, Mr Mayor. Are there any motions from the floor at this point, or would councillors like to hear from the Acting Director of Sustainable Growth? Anything further?
I'd like to move a deferral, Mr Acting Chair.
So you've foreshadowed a motion, Councillor Flannery, to defer.
I think that is the motion, is it, Mr General Manager?
My understanding from a procedural point of view is that notwithstanding the point, there was no debate entered into by the Mayor, so notwithstanding his conflict, procedurally I understood that the Chair, being the Mayor at the moment, had called that Councillor Manchester had moved the motion and it was seconded by I thought it was seconded by Councillor Armstrong at the time.
No.
By Councillor Walker. Sorry, Councillor Walker.
Okay, that's very good.
So that's the motion before you, councillors, is the motion. Well, the recommendation as it stands, that was the motion. So therefore, it's now over to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. I will foreshadow one problem. I can only see a number of faces at any given time. And accordingly, maybe I could do something technical to stop that. But otherwise, I'm going to need you to
I will do that. I'll be your eyes at the screen.
Anyway, I'll invite Councillor Manchester to speak in support of his motion.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Listen, I just on the point of a deferral, I believe this DA has probably the 40 days has lapsed, if not very close to lapsing, and were deemed a refusal anyhow. But so I believe that we've got to make a decision on it one way or the other tonight. In looking at all this, and I've heard from both sides of the fence as far as the objectors are concerned, and the committee, the tennis club itself is concerned. The tennis club, I think, have put together an excellent DA for us to, and the staff have, and I've got to commend the staff on their part in this too. But the club has gone to a lot of detail and put this DA before us, and in doing so, it does enhance the sporting facilities, and especially tennis, netball, and possibly basketball within the township. We have lacked a basketball facility for a number of years. Netball was very strong a few years ago and then died because of lack of facilities. And the tennis club has been in progress for probably the last 50 years, if not more. It is a major development and for the benefit of the community, and that's what I commend the tennis club in doing. They've taken a grant that they were given in the community funding program last year and have developed a major complex with that and adding some private funding to it. Yes, there is an impact on some of the neighbours, and in my view, after having a look at it, I believe it is only minimal impact to what they've actually got there at the moment. I think in a lot of cases it will improve the amenities that stand in front of them. When I look at from one residence and I see a grassy, unkept bank and some old half-fallen down or dilapidated old sheds, and then you move down 3 or 4 blocks or 3 or 4 housing blocks, and then you get completely away from the development, and it actually improves the amenities for those residents. So I don't believe there's any reason whatsoever for us to object to this. Yes, it will impact on 1 or 2 people, but you look at the benefit for the community as a whole, and that's what I'm looking at. I think it's a benefit to the community as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Do we have anyone who wish to speak against the recommendation?
Councillor Flannery.
Look, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor and General Manager. Look, I'm speaking against it because I was wanting to put the deferral motion because a couple of items I think just need clarification by staff. I don't believe there is an adequate drainage plan. It shows that the water drains to the northwest corner of the site, 1%. As per one of the objectors, in a 1 in 100 year rainfall event, which is what we have to consider when we're doing all housing, all major developments, you need to have adequate drainage. And that is not clear to me on the plans that have been provided, nor the plans to the residents, that the piping, look, it may well be adequate, but it certainly isn't clear that it is adequate. And I think by deferring it for 1 month, we can get some clarification on that. And if, in fact, the stormwater that they're going to install isn't adequate, they can make sure it is. I agree absolutely that they are a lot of work's gone into it. It will be for the overall benefit of the community. I have spoken to both sides. I believe that by and large there's been a very fair-sided debate. Things haven't got too acrimonious, but I just think if we deferred this for a month, it would allow for a little bit more consultation, which I don't believe, whilst there's been a view that both sides have co-opted with each other, I don't believe that there's been the meetings to sort out some of the smaller impacts, get clarification on that stormwater drainage. Because if we adopt this as it is, there will be nothing to make sure that drainage is adequate if in fact it is not the case. And I wasn't wanting to be in a position to vote against this, but I think to ensure that what is built will be long lasting, it's going to be here for 30 to 60 years, will be adequate. So I regret having to speak against it, but that's where we're at.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the acting director, which is actually Claire Scott, is available to respond to Councillor Flannery's question.
Yeah, I'd welcome that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, I'd just like to raise that the drainage diagrams provided in the plan have been conditioned in the consent, which is page 173 of the documentation before you. Condition 12, a comprehensive stormwater drainage system must be designed and constructed to collect and treat all stormwater generated by the development. This must be provided prior to CC and must be in accordance with Council's engineering guidelines for subdivision and development.
Thank you. But what does that mean when we get other sites? We need to deal with a 1 in 100 year event. What does that actually mean?
Director Scott.
Yep. Thank you. Again, through you, Deputy Mayor. It will mean that the engineering guidelines are for major and minor floods, so that's your 1 in 10 and your 1 in 100. And also we have a, under the regulations, consent authority may request the application, may request the applicant for development consent to provide additional information. However, the information that a consent authority may request does not include the information that is required to be attached to an application for a construction certificate. So if we can address the drainage issues as part of the DA consent condition, we must do that under the regs.
Thank you, Acting Director.
Councillor Horton was got his hand. I'm not sure whether for or against, and there's Councillor.
Looking for a speaker for.
Thank you, General Manager and Deputy Mayor. I support Councillor Flannery, and in his motion to defer the application for July 2020. This will allow the applicants.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor or Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tuckman. Councillor Horton, I was actually looking for a speaker for the motion. We'll have a speaker for the motion.
Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd actually first like to acknowledge the work done by the applicants because it is a really thorough DA, and I noticed when I go through the comments, the staff say the development will provide positive social and economic benefit. I'd also like to congratulate the residents who made their concerns known, and I know a number of residents who did go back a second and third time to make sure that they could get their concerns heard properly and accommodations were made. I acknowledge it's really difficult. There are probably some accommodations that just can't be made. I mean, it's a tennis court, you know, so there's probably some things that can't be adjusted. However, I think the stormwater, you know, it's a condition. It's a condition in the DA that they must provide a drainage plan, and I think they're prepared to do that. I think they've accommodated on so many other things in terms of the height of the tennis lights, the acoustic walls, the landscaping, even the use of the 4-metre laneway, which isn't part of it, but they have actually allowed. I think that they've really tried to do a DA that accommodates as many people as possible. And I can't see why there'd be any reason we wouldn't pass it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Speaker against, Councillor Horton, possibly. Yep, Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm against it for quite a few reasons, but the main one that I'll discuss now is that if it's deferred, as Councillor Flannery suggested, it gives the applicants and the joining neighbours time to sit down and completely sort out their problems and get it together. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I believe Council has presented excellent and very professional paperwork, which I'm sure meets all legal requirements. And as such, I congratulate Council staff in this regard. However, you wake up one morning to see a tennis court running parallel to and only a few metres from your back fence. It's 2.3 metres high. If you look up at the ceiling of your home, it's higher than that. That's the playing surface. Then add a 1.8 metre colour bond or equivalent fence, and then add on to that netting. Then add on that netting to prevent the balls going out, and bright lights so they can play in the night. Mr. Deputy Mayor, from a moral and to respect your neighbour's point of view, much is to be decided. And for that reason, I support the motion to defer it for another month and see if we can sort it out to a happy ending for those neighbours. A beautiful home, lovely yard, and they're going to look, it's like a prison it'll be when it's finished. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Just a point of clarification, Mr. General Manager, am I allowed to take any more speakers for or against this
the
motion?
my understanding on the read, it was
I've had two for.
Yeah, and I understand it's another 2, so it's a third for and a third against if that's the mix.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Anyone else to speak for?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
Rather than to enable me
to.
Thank you. I have some questions to the General Manager that will perhaps allow me to form an opinion in regards to this particular application. If I can be indulged. First of all, the issue of parking. I note that that there are some 60-odd parking spaces provided, plus I think there's 16 conditioned on site. The consultant's report that has been provided by the proponent, the minimum standard is about 200% of the available parking, and the RMS standard is about 4 times the available parking. I'm just a little bit concerned that perhaps there should be an allowance for on-site parking made, given the nature of this facility. It's going to be used very heavily for, as Councillor Manchester has indicated, futsal and basketball. They're all sports played by young people, and perhaps the prospect of passing over a rather busy road, Jugiong Road, is identified as being a major thoroughfare in the LSPS process and in the transport studies, then perhaps we are effectively making a rod for our own backs and even worse, exposing the communities to a level of risk that perhaps we can mitigate if we can improve the on-site parking, that is parking off the roadway. So I'd like some comment in regards to the parking. Secondly, I note that the development value is $750,000. I'm just reminded of the fact that that's about 50% of the value of the courts at Burrawa. Sorry, it's about twice the value of the court at Burrawa. And I'm just wondering how $750,000 can be realistic, given that there's 4 courts plus the earthworks and then lighting. And I note that the tennis club is in receipt of a grant of about $150,000 for lighting alone at Woorowa. So using those figures, $750,000 seems to be a little bit on the light side, and perhaps the contribution to 1% levy that exists under the former Harden Shire Council's Development Control Plan, or LEP, is perhaps being understated.
Can I just make a comment on that, on Councillor Armstrong's statement?
I'd prefer to have the answered.
I just wanted to make a couple of corrections there. Actually, it's just the fact it's not on Dugong Road.
Yes, I know that. Thank you.
I stand corrected. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you for your question, Councillor Armstrong, and through the Deputy Mayor, I will pass through to the Acting Director, Sustainable Growth, Claire Scott, to address the parking questions and the contribution questions. Claire.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Each court is required to provide 4 spaces as per the RMS guidelines. This equates to 16 on-street car parking, which is conditioned in the draft conditions attached in the report. You are right, there would be a 1% levy on the 94 for any costs greater than $350,000. So the 1% levy will apply to the cost of works.
Thank you, Acting Director. Do I have another speaker for the motion?
Councillor Rolls, I saw your hand first. So through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rolls.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just speak support of the motion. As a former resident of the Harden Shire and a long time, I taught for a long time in the Harden area. I know how important sporting facilities are for the youth of Harden, Murrumbara itself. And also I'd like to speak in consideration of how important this sort of complex can be for the growth and well-being of Harden as a town. If we're looking to promote people to live within Harden itself, the fact that we can provide up-to-the-date modern facilities is something that young families, and I think we have to look at families as well as older people who will also make use of those courts. I'm sure they play tennis, as I still do. And I see this as a project that has been beautifully managed and will provide for well into the future. And I see that as one of our roles as a councillor, for me to consider the needs of the future also of our Hilltops region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Does anyone else wish to speak against the motion?
Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I support, Mr. Deputy Mayor or Chairman, I support Councillor Flannery's motion and the support that Councillor Horton's giving that motion as well. Just to defer a month, I don't think a month's going to make a huge difference to the long-term success of the tennis courts or the country club. And it certainly does allow those landowners who are adjoining and who do have issues to sit down with both the tennis club and the country club committee. I note that the country club development is being backed by the Kruger Trust, and the original governing document of the Kruger Trust states that money is to be spent for the betterment of Harden. If the betterment of Harden is to upset a lot of residents along Scott Street, I don't know whether that's being achieved or not. We need to make sure that all of our residents are happy and the development and those residents can be harmonious in the best way possible. I will be supporting Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. That being the allotted people, I'd maybe ask the mover to speak. In reply, if you'd like to.
I'm sorry, just a clerical matter through you, Deputy Mayor. Just in the recommendation, it states DA 2019/0053 is actually 0063 as throughout the rest of the document. So just for clerical accuracy, that recommendation should read DA 2019/0063. I'm sorry for interjecting.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Mantes, would you like to write a reply on this one?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Chair. Just a quick one. Listen, deferring it, I think, for another month. It's been going on since February. They've had, they started off, I think it was in February, they had their first meeting with the community. They did have subsequently other meetings with one or two of the objectors. Some of them didn't turn up when they had the opportunity. And they went ahead and they did appease the most of the objectors' comments made at the February. They have gone through it and tried to appease them in a lot of different ways. And you're never, answer to Councillor Admiral, you're never ever going to make 100% of the people happy. It doesn't matter what decision you make on council. I've been there long enough to know that. Well, I've been there, meant that I've been there long enough to know that. So I recommend that it doesn't get deferred, that the decision is made, is on us to make it today, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. So I'd like to put the motion, which is the same as the recommendation of the papers, to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hands, please.
Rolls, Margaret Rolls, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Tuckerman, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Manchester, Councillor Walker.
Those against?
Those against are Councillor Horton, Councillor Flannery, Councillor Stadmiller and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, councillors. The motion is carried and we move on to the next item.
Okay, I'll just go collect the Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Warmer in here.
As is process, Mr. Mayor, the motion was passed to approve the consent to the development application DA 2019/0063.
Very good.
You now are back in the chair, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you again. Once to my deputy mayor. Through the other item that long, I forgot about the. I had a little note there written to vacate the chair, but I just didn't read it. So we're up to 20/110, correct? Yep. Financial distribution of the sponsorship money. So, councillors, there's a report there where the money's been allocated to and a recommendation in your hands. Move to Councillor Manchester. Second to Councillor Tuckerman. Any questions or comments in regard to that? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I note that the report states that council staff emailed community groups or organisations on an email list. Did any council staff actually contact any of these community groups via a telephone call?
I'll have to take that on notice, Councillor Stadman, and I'm not certain of the answer to that.
Thank you. Any other?
Mr. Mayor, just to assist probably with some information, we had a meeting prior to when this was actually decided, and the information that we gave staff that we'd like them to actually contact all groups, particularly those that were looking for funding for events. And since COVID-19 was restrictions were in place, we asked for that contact to be made. So I'm assuming that was made by phone call.
Thank you for that, Councillor Tuckerman, who's the chair of that actual committee. So thank you for that. Any other questions in regard to that item? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, can we ensure that an answer is provided by the relevant director as to whether it was by phone call or not? It is easy to assume that it was, but I'd like to have clarity around whether there was contact made or not. I note that the Bora Ex-Services Club has received recommendations for 5 grants. So they've obviously been very useful and very busy in getting those grants recommended. And there's a number of groups in Harden who, I'm not aware of the entire list, but Harden seems to have only managed to get about 12% of the funds available, one being the CWA hall, and the other being a long-standing issue where the men's shed was just looking to get their rubbish picked up. So a little bit disappointing from my end to see Harden only end up with a small amount of funds.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stadmiller. On that point, I've had a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. All those in favour? That's unanimous to accept. Yep. Those against? Thank you, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the Harden Murrumburra men's shed has had their waste charges covered in that dispersal.
Thank you. Item 20.111, the cash investment report. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation there. Recommendation is moved by Councillor Manchester, seconded by Councillor Walker. Thank you. Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 21.12, outstanding rates and charges collection report. Councillors, again, there's a report there and a recommendation there to receive and note. Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor O'Connor.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Flannery's got a question. Thank you.
Where there's a credit balance showing on the Bora water use charges. Is that correct? Of 16,328. Or is that it?
What page are we on, Councillor Flannery? You think?
On page 37.
Yeah, accounts credit balance 8,000 under Bora. Is that no, up the top 16,000? Yep. That's movement for the period, is it? The director.
That's the correct balance standing in the ledger at the date of the report, Councillor. That's the balance shown in the ledger at the date of the report.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what that shows is we collected more receipts than charges for that period. Obviously, you have an opening balance, so some of that would have been collected through that period. So it's a positive result. We've collected more than we charged.
The opening balance at the beginning of the financial year in July was 166,000. There were charges of 306,000, receipts of 322, being a net movement, a balance for the year of 16,328, and that is the correct balance for the period as standing in the ledger. The total balance at 31 May is 150,557.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Flannery?
Look, it does, but I just for clarity, I would have thought it might be a little bit clearer if under the charges, it has charges for the year, for 1st of the 7th to 31st of the 5th, was 306, receipts for 322. Perhaps the excess should really go back to the previous outstanding balance. I assume that's the allocation, the 16,000. So it's not, as I read it, it would show overpayment of fees for the year to date. But
no,
what I'm hearing is that the 16,000 credit balance, so to speak, needs to be allocated back to the outstanding balance from the previous year.
Well, it would be attributable, through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be attributable to the opening balance. It's still the balance outgoing, so we're just collecting some of those monies. Now, obviously, the matching it the 16,000 obviously relates to that period because it's greater than the charges.
So it's being treated on a cash basis, not accrual, but we operate on an accrual basis. And
I know it is an accrual. I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is an accrual basis. It's just the cash. More cash has come in than's been charged for this year, and there would be a portion of it that relates to the prior period because that balance is outstanding.
Yes, for clarity, really though, it should show as not overpayments by. It could be construed as overpayments. That's all.
Look, we'll take that on consideration to see how the format of the report to hopefully make that clearer for you, Councillor.
Thank you for that. Okay, on that point, we'll try again. We're going to move it a seconder. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Could I just thank the staff for that last item?
Thank you. You may most certainly do.
Because there's been a humongous improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
If the payments continue to improve, it will be an all-round improvement. You're right. 2113, development application stats for May 2020. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation.
Recommendation.
Councillor Armstrong's moved it. Councillor O'Connor seconded. Any questions in regard to that?
Mr. Mayor, just a question on the first page. Most of them are clock stopped for, considerable period, well over a year. I think there's only one on that first page where the clock hasn't been stopped for over a year. Can they either be deleted? Are they still on foot, or can they be deleted, or can we get some explanation of where they're up to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will defer to the Acting Director, Ms. Scott. Ms. Scott, if you'd like to answer Councillor Flannery's question.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, you are right. There are a lot there that have gone on extensive for some days there. There are a couple, if you refer to, I'll go down to the third item, the subdivision of 17 lots. That's on stop the clock because there needs to be owner's consent and was subject to the approval of the 74 lots of the one below it, being 195 Henry Lawson Way. So there are subdivision plans that have to occur in front of another one, or another one needs approval before that one can be approved. So there were also ones which we have now gone through the list and realised that we will be making a decision in the month of July and trying to finalise those stop the clocks. So hopefully you will see an improvement in July and August.
Thank you for that. I have a question in regard to 2020-089 on DA on page 50 in regards to Telegraph Road, which states earthworks, and the clock's been stopped for 15 days, but I'm just wondering what's involved in that DA, because there seems to be considerable earthwork already completed there.
I actually asked this same question through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand it's for farm buildings, but there's been no drawings provided, so the clock has stopped on that. Do you want to add anything to that, Ms. Scott?
No, we have the earthworks were for the purpose of a farm building, and no farm building details were supplied with the DA, so we've gone back with a stop the clock, seeking the detailed design, and that will be ending within another 15 days, which then we will be making a determination on that DA.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions from anyone else in regard to that? No? Okay, I'm going to move in a second. I'll put that. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. 2114 is the Hilltops Local Strategic Planning Statement, which is there, councillors, and a recommendation is there. We'll have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Any questions or comments in regard to that item? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, yet again, and it's not aiming this at any staff, but I know it's been a huge process to go through, but we've had some documents turn up late this afternoon, and it's very hard to digest. I would have liked to have seen them implemented into a hard copy so that we could go over them before we lodge this with the state government. So I don't know why that's happened, but if this needs to be pushed out a little bit longer and the state government waits till we get it right, I'm more than happy to support that. I don't know how others feel around the table. I know time is of the essence.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stedmore. Where was I up to? Councillor, who had a hand up to speak? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to echo the comments of Councillor Stadmiller. I received, saw notice of these. When I first read the papers, I wondered where, in Part A of the recommendation, where the proposed amendments were, and I scoured the paper and I couldn't find them. And I assume they are what's turned up just prior to the meeting. As such, I can't support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Who else had a hand up, you say?
No, that was Councillor Manchester.
Councillor Manchester.
No.
No, you're right. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Councillor Strong. I'd like to have our consultant, David Rowland, respond to some of the time constraints, that just for the councillors' understanding on what the time pressures were. So if I could ask Mr. Rowland to just explain to councillors, without commentary on, not in rebuttal, but just certainly an understanding on what we've been asked, directed by the state to do.
Through the Mayor, the state government has set an agenda for this, which has a deadline for the end of June. So we have got to have the document in with them by the end of this month. The timing for the consultation was based around trying to make sure there was enough time after that process to meet with council today and hand that over. The timing for the consultation was extended by a week to respond to COVID and the implications that had for our consultation process. So there has been some shortfalls in timing in that process to try to meet particularly the state government's deadline.
Okay, I think Councillor Armstrong had.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, I guess, provide some context for why this report's come a little bit late from the LEP Review Committee's perspective. The committee met last week to review the LSPS, the draft LSPS document. There were a number of changes that the committee believed need to be made, and one of those was a significant rewrite of the initial executive summary, I guess, of the document. So there's a pretty hard deadline on this, and the committee requested that staff use their best endeavours to provide a document to council prior to this meeting. Now, I guess if that's unsatisfactory, then two things. I'll accept responsibility for that as the chairman of the LEP Review Committee. And secondly, I'll chide all of those councillors that believe it is unsatisfactory for not attending these committee meetings to inform themselves. The attendance, to be perfectly truthful, has been quite terrible. I realise that COVID's made a difference. At the end of the day, council has used technology to offset that. So everyone's had an opportunity. Those people that have been prepared to attend have attended, have made the effort. There's not much more I can say about that. This deadline is a hard deadline. We need to meet it.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Wallace has his hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope the councillor who previously spoke wasn't making any reference to me. I'm not part of that committee, but I affirm what I said before. I can't vote on something I haven't read. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, look, I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Armstrong's comments. Given the struggles, I guess, we have had in getting our audited financial statements and whatnot to the state government, I don't think it's a good look getting this significant statement to them. I don't believe there have been any changes to the draft document that went out on public display and which was available to all councillors to review. Whilst we asked for the executive summary to be rewritten, and we did ask for the key feedback to be included into the document where it didn't substantially alter the overall draft document to be included. The staff said it was simply not possible to get the full document to us by this evening, and we as a committee expressed some regret about that, but accepted their comments and noted the deadline of the 2nd of July. We, I guess, could have brought it back to an EGM for it to be reviewed and picked over. I think as a committee we didn't believe, and we spent a couple of hours on the phone the other night, we didn't believe that that would achieve anything of a material nature. I endorse the report. A lot of work's been done, and I think a lot of good work's been done. There was a expression that perhaps more feedback. I think there were 84 submissions as alluded to in the documents, but the submissions were made by informed community members. I don't honestly believe we would have altered the document in a meaningful way by delaying it and perhaps earning the ire of the state government. It's certainly not ideal, but I do commend Councillor Armstrong and the staff on the work they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, for that. Councillor Walker. Now you're on.
Question, if I may. Do we get a hard copy at this point now? I noticed there was quite a few, and Councillor Flannery there mentioned 84 submissions from the public. I dare say they're built into the fabric of the final document somewhere, but is a hard copy now available?
Mr. Rowland?
David?
The edits and a clean copy was sent this afternoon, and the intention is after this meeting, depending on the outcomes of this meeting, we would have a hard copy provided to the councillors and then released to the, once with the state government, release it to the public as a tidied up version, not a raw version as it is at the moment. Yes, 84 submissions received, and all over 200 items had to be assessed after that period, so in that 3-week period before the council meeting.
Thank you for that. Okay, so Councillor Rolls.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just make a comment. I actually did read all the documents that came through this afternoon in time, and I did make a hard copy. I think a lot of us have printers. I'd just like to support the statements made by Councillor Armstrong, the work that has gone into this, and also the extra work that the staff were faced with when they accepted and acknowledged the queries that were raised by the meeting last week. And I'm more than happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Okay, we've had that go around. So we've got the recommendation of the mover and the seconder that it be recommendation as read. All those in favour?
Rolls, Alden, Tuckermore. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Against? Councillor Wallace and Councillor Stadmiller. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That recommendation is passed. 2115. Yep. Public exhibition, COPPABELLA Wind Farm Draft Voluntary Planning Agreement, Community Enhancement Fund. Mouthful. The reports there, councillors, and the recommendations there. So, again, I'm in your hands.
I'm sorry, just a point of order. It was advised that the exhibition is for no less than 28 days. And 2 parts in the recommendation and the purpose, it is 21 days. As per the consultation and timing, which is correct, it's no less than 28 days. So it is 28 days what you are looking at for that exhibition. I'm sorry,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that we reject the recommendation and propose an alternative recommendation.
Sorry, Councillor?
I'd like to move that we reject the recommendation, and I would like to propose an alternative recommendation.
Well, once again, I haven't had a mover or a seconder, and I've had a councillor move a motion from the floor. So the motion from the floor would be?
That The Hilltops Council be advised of other developments by Goldwind which have failed to meet their DA requirements, namely by locating wind towers on sites not approved and the compensation they have had to pay as a consequence of such action, with a report to come back to Council.
Okay, in my role as the Mayor, I'd only ask if to go anywhere we need a seconder for that motion, and then I'd probably seek some advice on the strength of the motion. But first of all, it needs a seconder before it goes anywhere. Seconded, Councillor Stadmiller.
I think you need.
Look, before I go any further,
through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to seek the advice of either Mr. Rowland or Ms. Scott on the relevance of that as our role to assess, create the voluntary planning agreement. So either Mr. Rowland or Ms. Scott. Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, with the process here, we are not the assessment manager, and therefore there is strong limitations on our role in this process, and therefore that has to be taken into consideration with anything that may be requested regarding changes to that consent.
Mr. Mayor, I acknowledge those comments, but if we had to put something out in public exhibition, I think we need to be aware of the facts of the proponent, who has breached two other, I'm advised, has breached two other DAs with other wind farms in the wider area. And I think we need to be aware of that before we put this out on, before we endorse a VPA.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, given the intent or what could be considered the intent behind the motion, that questions an organisation, I would suggest we would have to move into confidential to continue this discussion. Given the commentary, so
I tend to agree. So on that note, we'll have someone move that we move into closed council. Move Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Walker. All those in favour?
5, 6, yep, 7, yep, done.
Against? That's carried. We will now go into closed council with, we'll just wait for the live stream.
The advice I received last week.
We're on council.
We are now on Councillor Flannery.
Back on for people watching our council. We have been in closed council to discuss a matter. We're back now in open council. And we're up to item. Councillor Flannery, I know you still want to talk on the last item. Can we catch up on that later? Is that all right? Thank you. Item 2117, as we're up to now. Yep, the Regional Roads Repair Grant.
Oh, sorry, we haven't moved that motion to have the motion that's come.
You're going to move in open council? Yep.
It needs to be made. Yeah, we can be moved in open council now.
Okay, so the move and the second of the motion that we've come up with.
So Tony Flannery, Councillor Flannery, you moved that motion, and it was
Councillor Stadmiller, I believe.
Seconded by Councillor Stadmiller as the words before you, and now to the vote.
All those in favour of that motion? Thank you, councillors. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, General Manager. Regional Road Repair Grant. Item, councillors, the reports there, and there's a recommendation there. Move Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Rolls. Thank you. Comments or questions? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Again. And we'll go again. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you, councillors. That's carried. 2118, Local Road and Community Infrastructure Program Grant. And I might just hand to the General Manager before we flick on that. Did you want to comment about the change?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the change in relation to the local road and community infrastructure program, the recommendation was changed this afternoon, well, through the morning, to be clear about the intent and what we believe the equity of the programs put before councillors and requested for consideration. Given the additional fundings that Murrumbula Creek received, that project currently has funding of $3.6 million. And so the recommendation of staff considering the region as a whole, we believe that the Jugeon Master Plan would be a better utilisation of that money. I do stress we are in your hands. Those monies remaining are still not allocated. The 1.2, yes, that was resolved for Millville Road, BW, but the rest of the money, we are still in your hands. It is our recommendation based upon the ones that we will put forward. Thank you.
Way it goes to Jugeon Master Plan.
Councillors, before we just go too much further with this item, because there's an A and a B there, and I don't believe the B should be there in any shape. I believe the purpose of this is for councillors to come up with where the remaining funding will go. So I would like to suggest at this stage that we move into committee of a whole as this, because I believe there will be discussion around this and it won't be appropriate to do it any other way. So do I have a second to go into committee of a whole to discuss this? Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. So now, councillors, I'll hand back to anyone who wants to speak on this, and we're talking about the allocation of the remaining funds, and there were some suggestions made, and I've got no doubt there's other councillors there with suggestions. So the floor's open. We'll go to the bottom. Councillor Armstrong's there, then Councillor Stadmiller.
I think Councillor Stadmiller was first off the mark there, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Stadmiller, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I couldn't see you, so I don't know whether I beat you or not.
Good afternoon.
Look, I'm happy to see some money go towards a Jugeon Master Plan. In fact, I'd like to see the money split in half, and some of the money go towards a fund for the William Bradford Bridge west of Harden and Demondrel there, which is a terrible bridge. And I think that might actually get the state government thinking more about adding to that and putting that on the radar for it to be completed. I've been contacted again this week from members of the emergency services who are still looking for that to be funded in some way, and this is a good start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is a unique opportunity that Council has to use grant funds to effectively replace some of its assets that are would ordinarily be replaced out of our own revenue. We are heading towards a significant operating loss, as Council is aware. I believe that there are a number of projects within the program of works that have been effectively knocked in the head, and I look at best part of $250,000 worth of foot paving between Burrawa, Harden and Young that could effectively consume 50% of this money and provide value to the community, provide an economic stimulus by employing people, and lastly, reduce Council's operational costs insofar as its capital expenditure out of revenue. If those projects were to be excluded, then I'm quite certain, because of the fact that they were excluded from this year's budget, I'm quite certain that there are similar capital renewal projects that are in our 10-year financial plan that we would be able to effectively bring forward and bring forward at no additional cost to the community. That, to me, is a win-win situation. And I would suggest that those K&G job, or foot paving jobs, I beg your pardon, should be at the top of the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to bring to the sharpness of it, I will read from the terms. For anything that councillors are going to consider, councils will also need to demonstrate that the programs are additional to their pre-COVID-19 work program for 2021. So it's anything that's not planned for 2021. So if anything has been planned for 2021, it would be ineligible under this plan. So it has to be in addition to what's planned. So certainly Councillor Armstrong is correct with the horizon outside of the 2021 year. Anything for 21, 22 and beyond certainly can be brought forward. We just have to demonstrate that. I just wanted to make sure that's the clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if council will indulge me just for one further question, if the General Manager can advise us of capital renewals funded from revenue for the ensuing year, do we have?
I will defer to my Director of Finance. We have any.
I'm sorry, Councillor, I need to refer to the reports to be able to provide that information now. I don't have that to hand for the meeting.
We don't have that at hand at this point. I'm sorry, Councillor Armstrong, and we'll have to take that on notice.
Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that we probably can't adequately debate this then, because we're unable to know what sort of future projects, capital renewals, are in our 10-year financial plan. So that option is effectively removed from us while if we aren't aware of it. I'm going to suggest this matter should be deferred.
Okay, so that further complicates the issue at the moment. I've got staff here discussing and talking that point. I'll seek some clarification about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Director, the recommendation to defer.
Councillor, if you wish to set aside an amount to earmark for certain programs, that could be set over for the budget discussions without dividing the discussion of this.
You have to talk up, please, Director, I think.
If you wish to set aside an amount out of this, if you wish to set aside an amount from this program to reserve for various projects, that could be set aside and deferred into the 2021 budget discussion to be set aside. I just wasn't anticipating that we would be having a discussion to set aside a portion of this for another project tonight. I have been anticipating that we would.
Well, the report reads we're going to try and distribute the balance of the funds, which is 570,000 in manners that council thought fit. So I suppose if that's part of the debate, it's a bit hard to have that debate and that conversation if we haven't got the numbers there. So that makes a bit of sense about from where I'm sitting and putting it off till we got with the budget numbers there to go with it to know what's in to deal with. Councillors, I'm a bit in your hands a bit at the moment. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I right in reading where it says deadline for grant completion is 30th of June?
2021.
2021. Oh, pardon me. Okay. Thank you. I misread that.
Okay.
Just on that, Mr. Mayor, I did read that when I was going through it, and I thought we'd probably struggle can we get advice on what of the Jugeong master plan could be completed other than spending money on consultants within the 12 months?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that. In the revised report put to you, the funding would be used to deliver drainage works in Jugeong Road around the hotel area, footpath linking the hotel to commercial premises north of the hotel, pedestrian crossing points in Riverside Drive around the cafe, the hotel area, and minor drainage improvements and landscaping, street furniture. That being said, the report also says that no pathways in the Riverside zone would be able to be reconstructed as part of this allocation. So those 4 dot points in the report as sent out this afternoon or late this morning, that's what it would be used for. So rather than consultants, it's physical work, as I've been advised by infrastructure staff.
Okay, Councillor Horton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to suggest that when we've got the right documentation, the General Manager just spoke that I received all that, but I think we should workshop this when we've got the right documentation, and then we can make a decent decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just have a query. Why, I presume I can ask this, why is it that the staff have actually recommended the Geelong program? Is it to finish it off, the master plan? Is it because it is a gateway to Hilltops? Just so that we can be perhaps better informed why we should be convinced to put the money towards the Geelong master plan.
Through you, Mr. Crisp, you're part of that process. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but my understanding was it met the criteria within the time frame of which we understood we had to make a decision. Mr. Crisp, do you have anything to add to my comment?
Through the Mayor, Council has adopted a master plan improvement plan for the Geelong Village, of which Council has commenced some of that work, albeit at a very low level, with the 40 km/h deployment and some base car parking rearrangement down there in accordance with the landscape plan. All our recommendation does is to feed into that master plan as a recommendation to just continue some of those works down there. Council staff have fielded a number of complaints from the Geelong Village in accordance with, where is the rollout of the master plan? So we're trying to, out of respect of that, we are trying to just progress this matter. And Councillor Rolls did raise one point, though. It is also been reflected that this point is a gateway into the Hilltops area. So we're just trying to reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manchester.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support the Geelong master plan concept as long as it is shovel ready. If it's not, I think we should look at what other, because it will bring a stage one there, which hopefully would make it look, if not complete, partly complete anyhow, to beautify that area. But it's got to be shovel ready. We can't sort of wait around for further plans to be done, and we shouldn't be funding plans out of this. We need to do actually hands-on work. Someone can answer if it is shovel ready.
Councillor Flannery.
Oh, look, Mr. Mayor, I concur with Councillor Armstrong's comments that certainly if we were to allocate, say, $250,000 to footpaths or capital works that are, needing to be done, it would have a double whammy. It takes that money out of our budget and gets the work done. I also, hear the argument about tourist dollars, and certainly Geelong is our number one tourist location at the moment. Week in, week out, there are hundreds of people that visit Geelong. So I think if we could get a report back to next month's meeting, we seem to, whilst it is delaying it, we could just get a bit of an indication of bang for the buck. Perhaps we can allocate 300 to Geelong, 200 to footpaths, or I certainly would like to see work start at Geelong, but I'm cognizant of our budgetary constraints for work around the Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I concur with that statement that was made earlier on, and it makes sense if it's a double whammy, footpaths for the communities and in Borawa, and that gets done. And then if the report can come back to us and say, well, if there's $350,000 left, what does that do for the Geelong master plan? Can we start something there? I don't know. That would be a better way of us knowing exactly what we can do. I don't really want to see, from my point of view, any of this money go to somewhere, as you said, more consultants or starting a project that's going to cost $3 million and we've only got $300,000 to start with. I don't think that's what the idea is. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would actually like to see the balance of this money spent on the Garibaldi Galley rehabilitation. I think the money for that project was egregiously removed and put in the hole in the ground for the water. And I think that's where the money ought to be spent. It is also a tourist attraction. It also won't require any consultants because the work's been done. And I think we ought to be seen to be sticking to the plans we made originally. So I would support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace, for that. Thank you. Okay, so we've had a discussion about that. Is the general feeling, if we come back into council, that the recommendation would be that we would receive and note this report and seek a further report to the July meeting? How do you want to word seek a
just to make sure that I understand through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent. What I've heard is the recommendations came from the initial discussion from councillors as to what they would like considered or investigated. Council then investigated those, council staff provided the numbers next to those projects. Been introduced today a further consideration potentially for footpath that may or may not have been, which would not have been done in 2021 to be brought forward to make sure it fits the intent of the grant, i.e. hit the ground running. So I just am seeking some clarification on what councillors would like costed, what are the projects that you want us to look at for your consideration. There were the number here that we looked at. I just need a little bit more direction for staff to look at what do you want us to look at. I'm sorry if that sounds anything but what it is.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I think we just need to be careful of putting new footpaths in new areas where we have footpaths in areas at the moment that need replacing desperately. And to take it a step further, in Swift Street, which I've raised before, we actually have issues with trees on council-owned land lifting the gutter and funneling water down into other properties that are damaging those properties. So if we're going to start listing what's needed, it's probably the ones that the properties are getting damaged, then replacing the current infrastructure that's failing before we start looking to build new infrastructure in regard to paths. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. After that, so the General Manager was asking what else we'd like council to look at. Well, footpaths have been named, have been there to look at. That's the only thing that's bounced out.
Mr. Mayor, with respect, unless council has a list of the forward works in its 10-year financial plan for capital, how on earth can we make that decision? And I concur with Councillor Stadmiller's sentiments. It is capital renewals that we should be looking at, not necessarily new capital. So I'm quite certain that if we can get our 10-year financial plan out with our capital program in it, then that gives councillors a bit of an idea as to what might suit the funds and suit the works program.
Thank you for that. And for the sake of moving the meeting along, I think we have agreed that we were going to ask for a further report to come back to council to the July meeting. Would that be appropriate, councillors? I think that's what we have resolved out of this.
Well, Mr. Mayor, can I just say before because I think we're still in committee of the whole.
Yep, we are.
I do agree with the General Manager that we put some goalposts up last meeting. Now we've changed them again. Look, I think we've got to either have a workshop and stop bloody wasting staff's time, or we just vote on this here and now, allocate it as per recommendation. I mean, let's actually give the staff some direction on this.
That contradicts what I just said a moment ago completely. So I'm going to bring us back out of committee of a whole and ask that someone put a motion that we can actually work on or vote on. I think otherwise the only other alternative is to say to get a report back to next month's meeting when we're all more informed about what we want to do. So I'll move that we come back out of committee as a whole. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Manchester. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. 2118, and the reports there and the recommendations there.
Mr. Mayor, I move a recommendation that we receive and note this report, and I believe the comments made about giving the staff direction, and I believe that we look at the balance of money to be spent on the Jugeong master plan with drainage, footpath works, and what have you that proposed down there at Jugeong if it's shovel ready.
So
I support that.
So that's the actual recommendation. Has been moved by Councillor Manchester, seconded by Councillor Flannery, that we receive and note the report and endorse the balance of the grant submission to the Jugeong Master Plan. And that's the recommendation that's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor?
No, I reserve that right, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone like to speak against it?
Mr. Mayor, I'll speak against it.
That's one try.
I believe that that we are making a rod for our own back in this regard. The Jugeong Master Plan is not a $500,000, $600,000 project. It's a multi-million-dollar project. We're not going to be able to do much with this. All we are doing is putting lipstick on a pig, and we don't want to do that. We want to make it into something far more than that. Without adequate funding, then I don't think we can. However, I think there's an opportunity here for us to receive twice the benefit out of this funding by using it to fund some capital renewals that would ordinarily be funded out of our revenue. That releases this $500,000, effectively provides $1 million worth of value by funding the $500,000 worth of capital renewals and then freeing up that other $500,000 of council funds that would have been spent on those capital renewals for either new capital renewals or other works or the provision of services. And I think that without the ability to fund 100% of the Jugeong Master Plan, then it is reckless to continue along those lines.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Horton. Who was the seconder? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Armstrong. I think the money should be spent on capital renewals, such as footpaths, and that's the way to go.
You spoke. Yeah. I'd actually call someone to speak for the motion, which was against that. So I'll take Councillor Tuckerman.
Mr. Mayor, can I invite, through you, Councillor Armstrong, to perhaps look at an alternative motion?
Looking for a foreshadowed motion by the sound of this.
I'm happy.
Or an amendment.
I'm happy to entertain an amended motion.
Somebody's motion. You have to foreshadow a motion.
We've got the recommendation that's moved and seconded, so anything that would come now would have to be a foreshadowed motion, I would imagine.
No, an amended motion can be put forward. You can move an amendment.
To the motion that's there, okay. What is that amendment, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move an amendment that the council workshop, hold a workshop within 7 days, hold a workshop to consider capital renewal projects.
Speaking against what's just been put up.
That's right.
So
suitable for expenditure of these funds.
Look, Councillor, just looking at the recommendation that was just put and seconded, your amendment is in stark contrast to it. There's endorse the balance of the money to go to the Jugeong Master Plan is the recommendations put up. Your amendment to it is saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to defer and look at something else. So it flies in the face of the motion that's on the floor. So I don't think I can accept it as an amendment.
That's correct.
So if I haven't got anyone who wants to have a foreshadowed motion, something different, we will deal with Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, can I foreshadow a motion that the funds be used on capital renewals, which are agreed upon by councillors to be of an urgent nature?
So we've got a foreshadowed motion to deal with, if we get to it, which reads...
funds to be used on capital renewal projects, which I think we have to mention that comply with the conditions. With the conditions. Is that okay, Councillor Stadmiller? Is that?
Yes, that's fine by me. I'm referring to those gutter and pathway issues that need renewals that are currently already on our books.
All right. Okay. So I'll go back now. There's a
motion is as it
is. And we'll deal with the motion that's on the floor. That was to endorse the money to go to the Jugiong Master Plan. Now I've had a couple of speakers for and against. Anyone else want to speak before I put this? Because I'm going to put it. Okay, I'm going to put that up. That receive and note the report and endorse the balance of the grant submission to the Jugiong Master Plan. All those in favour? 2, 3. Those against? The against takes that motion has failed. That takes me to the foreshadowed motion. Do I have a seconder for the foreshadowed motion, please? Councillor Armstrong's seconded Councillor Stadmiller's foreshadowed motion, which reads, put it up, please, for everyone. Do we have to put in there about a report coming back to council for next month, or are we just going to go over that?
That would leave it in the hands of staff to say which capital renewal projects. I think councillors would want to have a discussion about the prioritisation of what capital renewals, so that the funds be used on the capital which apply with the conditions, and a further report identifying capital renewal projects for the consideration of councillors.
Who's on speaker? Reader, is it? Have enough of that? Yep.
Stadmiller and
Councillor Stadmiller. I think Councillor O'Connor, you may be unmuted and having a conversation. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Stadmiller, are you happy with what's on the screen, please?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Armstrong.
My apologies, I was on mute.
Sorry.
When will it be brought back, I guess, and or will this come back to a workshop? Will it come back to a council meeting or a workshop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I ask Mr. Crisp, do we have enough? What is our time frame? Is our time frame just to make sure that the things are done by the 30th of June 2021, or is there some time frame that we need approval from the funding body?
Through the Mayor, the funding body doesn't specify a time frame for nomination.
Yep.
However, the longer we leave it, the smaller the window we have to organise and get ourselves prepared.
So can I put it Mr. Crisp, would we be able to get that? And I also asked the Director Corporate, would we be able to fulfil a workshop and have that information to councillors so they can work through it within the next coming week, so we bring a report back to July? Yes, Mr. Chris, he's back by July soon enough?
Yes.
Is that we can do it? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller, are you okay with that time frame?
Yes.
And Councillor Armstrong, are you satisfied with that motion as it now stands?
Eminently satisfied with it.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you very much for that, councillors. Okay, councillors, we've got that foreshadowed motion on the board there now, so if we can take it down, please, so we can see that. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Yeah, no, not now.
Those against? Councillor Wallace was against it. Been noted, please. So that motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 2119, Energy Savings Certificates Provider for LED street light conversion. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation. Have a mover. Move Councillor Armstrong, was it?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Manchester.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple.
Can we have the corrections? Some corrections there too within the recommendation. National Carbon Bank of Australia, I meant that's meant to be.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a couple of questions. It says the financial implications, but I read the report and I can't see one mention of any monetary value on this. Is it a feel-good thing, or is there a dollar saving that we're achieving from this? At the risk of being overly critical, the report I found difficult to read for grammatical errors and lacking substance.
Someone like to address the question?
Mr. Crisp.
Through the Mayor, I'll attempt to reply. The only savings that I can make out in the very short layman's terms of these energy saving certificates is this share or certificate that gets generated when they issue these energy certificates back to council. What value they are, I don't have a value on those certificates at this stage. I don't know how many they're going to be generated. But that's about all I can offer in that area. I'm sorry.
So if we did nothing, does it mean anything?
Through the Mayor, I'll defer to the Director Corporate.
Councillor, in terms of the market valuation in the accounts council, at this point in time, I don't believe we'll be taking them up in terms of any tradable or real valuation in the books of account. I don't think they'll be taken up with any carrying value in the financial statements, but I'll come back to council with the information on that.
Yeah, with that commentary, I've lost the context of what you're asking us to do in the recommendation. But Councillor Flannery said we do anything or we do nothing. What happens? I'm struggling to see what you're asking council to do.
Mr. Mayor, I think this might be something that we can defer and get some further and better particulars supplied to us next month.
Sounds like that's been moved by Councillor Armstrong, and I'll second that, that this matter is deferred to next month's meeting when we can have some more clarification about exactly what we've been asked. I'll put that, if all councillors would like to, in favour. Thank you. Thank you. Those against? Councillor Wallace. And Horton. Thank you. I just can't see this.
Against.
Item 2120, Hilltops Works Report. Reports there, councillors, and the recommendations there. Moved Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Rolls. Thank you. Any questions or comments, Councillor Flannery?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank the General Manager for some of the changes to the report, although I do notice some areas of the Greater Shire have more detail than other areas, and perhaps with future improvements we might be able to get to a more meaningful list of what's happening. The works report is from the 1st of May to the 31st of May, so it's basically in a month in arrears, and the forward works report is from the 1st of June to the 30th of June, so we're actually 6 days from completion of what might otherwise be described as a forward works report. So if for the next meeting we could have the works report be the June report, well, it'll be July, so if it could be actually carry 2 months, the works report be month to date to July and also include June to see whether the items that are now listed as a forward works report are completed, and we have the August forward works report, which would be far more meaningful. I note in the Parks and Gardens plan works report that there's street tree maintenance and pruning, and I refer to previous council minutes where the Neil Street work was to include replacement of the trees that died or were removed because they were poor specimens last year. I would like a report to council on when those trees are to be replaced. They're the Robinia trees that council voted to replace in this time last year. I note that the water filling station in the capital works at Young has been completed and commissioned. It notes the source of funds as a water fund. I understand that was actually the drought fund. Could I get clarification on that, please? A question on the Musgrave Street reconstruction. I know in passing a number of times that there's been a complete reconstruction of Musgrave Street. What the issue was with Musgrave Street that necessitated a complete reconstruction? Could we also get a report to council on the VPA money from Gaylong Mine, please, with respect to expenditure on council roads, on the relevant council roads covered by that VPA.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Flannery, are you happy for those questions to be answered in the next month's Hilltops report, clarifying all those questions that you've asked in the report itself?
If you're talking about the general circular,
yeah,
the answer is no. I'd like them to come back to the council meeting, please. Particularly with respect to the tree replacement. It comes under the works report. What is happening about the tree replacement and irrigation system in the Neil Street plantings, and council actually voted to replace those trees, so I'd like to know that it's going to happen this week.
I'm sorry, Councillor Flannery, you've answered my question that I was proposing that it comes back in the council report, not through the newsletter. I was asking whether you were satisfied that if it forms part of the works report, not a separate report, but I answer those questions within the works report as one report rather than separate reports. That was my question.
Providing it has the sufficient detail of...
Okay, yep, understood. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions in regard to that report, councillors?
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Armstrong.
Page 197, last month, Council adopted its quarterly budget review and removed all the funds from water meter renewals and capped the figures at young. I noticed there's another 140 metres renewed or replaced. I'm just wondering what the source of funds would be, given that councils capped those funds at $11,000 and taken the others away.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have the Director of Corporate respond to Councillor Armstrong. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, it's correct that at the recommendation of the then Director that adjustment was made during the quarterly budget review process. That adjustment, whilst immaterial, is not a correct adjustment to have made to the budget. And we propose that rather than make a further adjustment to the budget, that we correct that during the process of the end of year financial statements, and don't make a further adjustment to the budget, but acknowledge that that adjustment ought not have been made. The cost of water meters is an issue that we've looked into as well. The cost of water meters is currently $50 approximately per 20 mil pipe unit and $122 per 25 mil unit. Most of the water meters that are replaced are the 20 mil units. The labour and overheads and other costs associated with the replacement of those units are at around $152 per unit on the vast bulk of those items. So it's a reasonably close estimate of around $200, including the meter and the labour and materials and overheads allocation to those units. So there's a fairly substantial variation in that, but in the overall financial position of council, still not a material adjustment to the budget to be made. But I do note comments and regret the reframing of that in the budget adjustments in the last quarterly review, and we've noted that situation and it won't be occurring in future.
Thank you for that. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, just on a couple of the questions I've already asked, could we get clarification on the water refill station at Young? That is from the drought funding, not the water fund. And when will the HARDEN standpipe be commissioned?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It was from the drought fund, not from the water fund. I'm sorry, Councillor Flannery, your second question.
One for HARDEN.
The current state of play with regard to the HARDEN water filling station.
Are you talking about its...
The quick fill that we agreed that I know they've certainly started work, that was also to be put in as part of the drought funding.
That's correct, from the drought funding. That is correct, Councillor Flannery. The four that were noted in that report were all to come from the drought fund.
When will it be commissioned?
I'll have to take that on notice, unless Mr. Crisp, you're aware of when that HARDEN tap water is to be, the water fill station is to be commissioned.
Through the Mayor, I will also have to take that on notice.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councillor Flannery, our manager responsible for water and sewer is on paternity leave with his new son, so I don't have him at hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, but we'll get back to you when we discover that out. Yep. Okay. Did anyone else have their hand up in regard to that? I don't think they did. Yep. So, okay, I've got to move in a seconder. With that, I'll put that report. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. take us to 121, the action summary report, which is there, and a recommendation, councillors. Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Any questions? Is that a question, Councillor O'Connor?
It is. I was wondering on item 18316, has any progress on negotiations been made to acquire that land parcel for the upgrade on Burley Griffin Way?
My understanding through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is Raymond is still in discussions with them, but I have no further commentary other than they are still in discussions, and they appeared hopeful at our last meeting, which was probably 2.5 weeks ago. I saw Silvio, who just made that comment. So they're still in those discussions and positive, but I can't commit to that they've made progress other than that representation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, a similar question to Councillor O'Connor, but and on a similar tenor that my previous motion regarding the wind farms, we have multinationals doing developments in our shire and they are just not accountable. We have been waiting for years for that intersection to be upgraded. They have the DA approval on the basis that they upgraded that intersection. There's been nothing done about parking outside Gaylong. I have seen no expenditure of VPA money on roads in the last 12 months that we collect. We need to get on and start doing our job, enforcing our conditions of approval, spending money in the community where it needs to be spent. So can we actually have some follow-up on some of these items, please, particularly in relation to Greymont or Sabelco or whoever the latest gee whiz band is, that we're not like all the others, it turns up. Could I also get advice on, I'm a delegate on the Borough Men's Shed and I've heard nothing. I assume they've had no meetings in COVID, but are there any meetings that are to be held? And also, can we get a meeting of the Asset Management Committee, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, can I move that we put a deadline of August in regards to the negotiations between Greymont and Bobra Station? This has been going on for months, years, and nearing a decade, this intersection. I got on council in 2012 in Harden. And I'd like to know what the feeling around the table is to actually see some action. Sort of sick of being told that they're in negotiations. Well, sit down, have a meeting, work out who's paying for what and who's doing what. Let's get it done before we lose a life on that intersection. We've got trucks pulling out of there weighing 60 and 70 tonne at 10 k's an hour across other trucks that are doing 110 k's an hour. It's just got to be done now. And I think the councils around the table need to step up and push for this to be done. And I agree with Councillor Flannery and O'Connor on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. I'll just defer to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't put a condition on a negotiation between two external parties. I'm not sure what instrument I'd be able to use to bear on them other than urge the importance of that. I'll take that on notice to have the discussions to get a more fulsome.
Mr. Mayor, just in that regard, a condition of approval of the 320 is that the intersection be upgraded. Now, it hasn't been upgraded. Surely we are knowingly allowing trucks to go around there in breach of their DA conditions. Surely we have a duty of care here.
To that point, Councillor Flannery and Councillor Stadmiller, from recollection, and my memory doesn't work all that well, we've got a recommendation, a motion on our books that said that was to be acquired because there couldn't be negotiated before, and we made mandatory acquisition of that to go ahead, only to be, we met with the new owners, Greymont, and they said, look, they'd really start off on a good foot with their neighbours and they'd like to negotiate with it. I concur with you. We need probably to say to Greymont, you know, this is the time's up. You've negotiated, it's not working. We've got a motion on our books to say it should be acquired, and maybe we should follow that. I agree with you. But how do we go about doing that now with Greymont? I will leave to the general manager and staff, but I agree that we need to do something and do it sooner rather than later. Councillor O'Connor.
Perhaps we can look at changing that quantity of lime that's currently being used until that condition's met. I mean, I think they've had a fair leeway. I think it's about 10 years.
Yep. Okay, well, I definitely think we need to sit in with Graymont and say, there's that date. It's not done then. We've got a motion to acquire that, so let's go ahead and do it. Councillor Stadmiller's got his. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, are you happy to have that discussion, or would you like us to move a motion from the floor stating to Graymont that if negotiations aren't completed by a particular time, we will revert back to that original resolution?
With the concurrence of council, I'd like to have that discussion with the General Manager and the top people at Graymont and put on the table council's views that this needs to be done now, sooner rather than later. And if they can't accomplish that, then we will follow through on the resolution we have on our books. If council's around the table is happy enough with that. Councillor Horton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second Councillor.
We haven't got any motion on the board.
Councillor Badmiller, yeah. I'm happy to second his motion.
Well, we didn't really have a motion. It was talked about it, and then we just discussed it with concurrence of the fellow councillors that we, the Mayor and the General Manager, would talk to Graymont and sit at the table and come up with a timeline sooner rather than later. And if they can't agree to that, we will follow through with the resolution that has already been made by council.
No, Mr. Mayor, I actually would like to move a motion from the floor, and the motion would be that with respect to agenda item X in the
21.2.1,
that council seek legal advice on its position regarding breach of DA conditions with respect to Burley Griffin Way intersection, and whether council should insist on a reversion back to 220 tonnes of extraction from the Gaylong mine.
Mr. Mayor, I think this might be out of order. This item's not on the agenda for council. And
it is by virtue of there's unresolved items in the council business paper, Mr. Mayor.
It's in relation to the progress of those, not specific items. I think, Councillor Flannery. I think that this is overstepping the agenda, and I'd suggest that council probably needs to have a specific report item, or alternatively to resolve into committee, discuss it with them, bring forward a recommendation from committee. But right now, I can't see that this fits within the code of meeting practice.
I have to concur with what Councillor Armstrong's saying, but could I just go back to what I just mentioned about the Mayor and General Manager meeting with Graymont to discuss this, and happy to bring a report back to council so we can put it on the table at the July meeting, so that we all know where we're up to try and bring some clarity and finalisation to this before we get too involved. And Councillor Armstrong's right about the motion from the floor relating to that. So, councillors, I'm in your hands there a bit, but I'd just like to see this, what we've got in front of us, done.
Can we just follow what your recommendation is, Mr. Mayor, and you and the General Manager meet with Graymont, bring back a report to council, and then we can address it after that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Manager.
Second.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Walker. It's not actually a resolution, it's an understanding of council, isn't a commitment by myself and the General Manager. So what we've got is the note and endorse the action plan, moved in the seconder. So I'll put that now. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors.
Against?
Against? Nobody against? No. Thank you. 21.2.2 media releases and officers for local government circulars, councillors, notes that's there, and a recommendation. Moved, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Walker. Thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. Committee reports requiring action, 21.2.3. The first one is the Hilltops Council Local Traffic Advisory Committee. And there's a report there and there's a recommendations there, Councillor.
Mr.
Move, Councillor Manchester. Seconder. Councillor Walker, thank you.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, I note in the recommendations that are coming up in adopting this and cognizant of the recommendation to change the scope of these festivals, but it says under the special event HARDEN Kite Festival, dot number 3, the organiser is to seek the services of a suitably qualified traffic control management provider to provide traffic control management for this special event. The inference by virtue of that motion, I would understand, is that the organiser therefore would pay for that traffic control cost, which is a cost that none of the other festivals have to pay. So, albeit that the festival may not go ahead in its traditional format as we adopted, could I get advice as to whether there is a underlying stipulation that the Kite Festival has to pay for their own traffic control, but the others don't?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not aware of any parameters set in stone. I think this has just been precedent, and those committees have worked under those precedents, and that's what they've done in the past. So that's what they will continue to do. So, yes, I'm sorry, I can't categorically say that is the reason, but this would just appear to be precedent that they would have their agendas, that this is the way they've run their events in the past.
Kind of a comment on that one,
Councillor Walker. If
I may. What happened last year? This plan was approved, and they moved outside that approved plan, and I suggest that led this recommendation. So if they stay within the plan, as it says.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments in regard to that report, councillors? Councillor Stedmiller.
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, do we have any sort of report that's already been completed that details where trucks can stop within each of the 3 major towns and the corresponding villages for truck drivers to use shower services or purchase food or whatever?
I don't know where that's coming from, Council, in relation to this report.
I might have skipped ahead into the traffic committee part, sorry. Hold off till then.
Mr Mayor, just a point, on page 217, there's 2 dates there that are I'm pretty sure that headline in green is meant to read the 4th of December, just for
typo.
So I'll go back to Councillor Stadmiller, and would you like to expand on your question and where it's included in that report for me there, please, Councillor?
Just for clarification, Mr Mayor, are we looking at Hilltops Council Local Traffic Advisory Committee?
We are.
We are. It was just a question based on traffic movements and the use of trucks in the Shire area, where they had the ability to stop and shower and or purchase food as truck drivers. Just a question on behalf of a constituent.
Who would like to respond to that question? I don't have the answer. Are you directing it to Councillor Walker, as Councillor Walker sits on that committee, or to staff?
Yeah, but I was an apology for that meeting.
Okay, there you go.
And Councillor Manchester chaired it.
Do I take it as a question in general, or was it a direct question back to the last meeting, Councillor, or just a general clarification if it's been discussed at all?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just wondering if it had been discussed at all of late, and if it hadn't, maybe something the committee could look at, because there are a number of truck drivers in the area that would like to get a bit of clarity around where they can pull up and can't, and no stopping zones, and business owners wanting to move them on and so forth. So it is becoming a bit of an issue.
If I may come in on this one, that was something that should be covered in the LEP and traffic routes, which seemed to be wasn't clarified in that neither.
Thank you very much. We'll look into making sure that we'll do some inquiries about that and if it can be looked at. Given that. All right then. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one, Mr. Mayor. On page 222, there was a request from the owner of Back Creek Orchard for a sign. I guess just for my own purposes, who determines, or what determines? You do see signs going around that'll say XYZ Pole Dorset Stud or ABC Bed and Breakfast, and here they've obviously applied for a sign to be put up for their orchard. What are the specifications as to who gets signs and who doesn't?
Just to can I make a comment on that one through you, Mr. Mayor, that the RMS, I was going to say RTA, the RMS have got certain conditions on what people can put signs on actual signposts. They to point to different venues, and they've got to provide certain amenities when those people get there. And if they don't comply, they can't put the sign up. And there are a lot of illegal signs across the Shire, well, they haven't asked us to be pulled down at this stage, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. But there's a lot of places that don't comply, and most of it is supplying food and toilet facilities and stuff like that. And this one didn't comply, and there's, like I said, there's a number of others that don't comply also. But there are certain conditions to be met by the RMS and our local traffic authority to get those signs put up on actual signposts.
Thank you. Give that clarification, Councillor Manchester. Appreciate that. Okay. No other questions in regard to that item? I'll put that matter. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors, for that. We move over to questions with notice. Nil. Notice of motion rescission. Nil. Confidential matters. We have one, so I would ask that someone move us into closed council, please. Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Manchester. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We will now go into closed council, and now we'll ask to on item 2125.
Right. We're in.
Okay. On the two matters of discussed 2125, that the recommendation as stated was adopted. All those in favour? Yes, thank you, councillors. The second item was 2126, the organisation structure. It had moved in the seconder. Would I like a show of hands to on that recommendation, please? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the end of our meeting at 8:08, and I thank you all very much for your participation and input, and hope everyone's staying safe and well in this where we are, and hopefully we can come around out of it. But as I said earlier, some of the stuff around Victoria is a bit scary.
Just while we have people, is council still of a mind to continue with the Zoom meetings, given the relaxation? I understood from the last meeting you were. From this meeting, are you all of still the same mind to continue with Zoom?
If I may.
Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I'd like to see one in the chambers. I think the next meeting's going to be a fairly big one, is it not? This one's gone for over 4 hours, I think, or around about 4 hours, 3.5.
So, councillors, I'm in your hands as if you want to do the July meeting in the chambers or by Zoom.
I'm happy to continue by Zoom under the circumstances.
I'd agree. Yeah, at this stage, we stick with Zoom for at least another month.
Okay, so I'll run around now and we'll sort this in the same old-fashioned way. We'll have a show of hands for council's July meeting to be held via Zoom. All those by Zoom.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Against? Sorry, councillors, it'll be by Zoom. Going on them numbers for July, and hopefully for everyone's sake, we get to July that we will be able to change things around for the benefit of everyone. Oh, well, benefit to make things happy for everyone. So,
Mr. Mayor, if we could get that asset management committee back up and running, I don't know that we need to wait for the next meeting, please.
Thank you. Yep, the ASAP for the asset management committee.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, councillors, and we'll catch up. Good night.